In the shadows of the Zulu royal kraal, a whisper could be more deadly than a spear. And one woman's whisper changed the course of history. She was a princess born under a dark omen, destined to be alone. But Mkabayi kaJama would not fade into the background. She would command from the darkness, pulling the strings of power with a ruthless political genius. She handpicked a forgotten boy from obscurity and forged him into a king, a military genius who would build an empire. But when that same king, the great Shaka Zulu, began to spiral into madness and tyranny, she faced an impossible choice. The same hand that placed the crown was now the only one strong enough to take it away. How far would she go to protect the kingdom she loved? And what does it cost your soul to destroy the monster you created? Asterisk, to understand Mkabayi, we must travel back to the mid-18th century, to the lands that would become the Zulu kingdom. This was not yet the mighty empire we know. The Zulu were a small, insignificant clan among many, ruled by Mkabayi's father, King Jama. From the moment of her birth, Mkabayi was different. She was a twin. In Zulu culture, this was often seen not as a blessing, but as a terrible omen, sign of bad luck and a threat to the lineage. Tradition demanded that one twin be sacrificed, but King Jama could not bring himself to do it. He spared both Mkabayi and her sister, Mama. This decision marked her. She was the princess who should not exist, a permanent reminder of a broken taboo. She grew up fierce, intelligent, and utterly devoted to the stability of the Zulu kingdom. Perhaps to prove her worth and justify her father's choice, when her brother, Kona, became king, Mkabayi's influence grew. She never married, dedicating her life not to a family of her own, but to the politics of the royal house. She became the king's most trusted advisor, the power behind the throne. But Kona was weak, and his reign was plagued by indecision. Mkabayi watched, her strategic mind constantly working, planning for a stronger future. She knew the clan needed a leader of iron, not of straw. And she had her eye on one of Kona's many sons, a boy named Shaka, born to a minor wife and cast out, living in exile. In this forgotten prince, Mkabayi saw raw, unshaped potential, and she began to plot. When Kona died, the kingdom is vulnerable. Mkabayi moved with precision and ruthlessness. She ensured her preferred heir, Siguana, was installed. But when he proved to be just as weak as his father, Mkabayi made her first devastating play. Historians whisper of a swift, bloody coup orchestrated by Mkabayi that removed Siguana from power and cleared the path for her true choice. She then sent for the exiled Shaka. She saw in him a revolutionary, a fighter who had redesigned the very art of war, transforming the Zulu army into the feared impi. With Mkabayi's political backing and Shaka's military genius, they were an unstoppable force. The Zulu clan exploded into an empire, conquering and assimilating all who stood in their way. For years, it was a perfect, deadly partnership, but power corrupts. Absolute power, as Shaka now wielded, corrupts absolutely. The military genius who built the empire began to decay into a paranoid tyrant. The death of his mother, Nandi, shattered what was left of his sanity. He instituted horrific mourning rituals, ordering mass executions and forbidding the planting of crops. The kingdom, built on strength and discipline, was now starving, terrified, and bleeding under the weight of its king's bottomless grief. Mkabayi watched. The empire she had sacrificed everything to build was now tearing itself apart. The king she had handpicked, nurtured, and supported had become a monster more dangerous than any external enemy. The whispers began again in the royal court, but this time they were not whispers of advancement. They were whispers of survival. Mkabayi, the master strategist, faced her greatest calculation. The stability of the Zulu nation demanded a new king, and that meant the current king had to die. The ant who had once been Shaka's greatest protector now became his deadliest threat. September 1828. The air in the royal kraal was thick with fear and unspoken conspiracy. Shaka's paranoia was at its peak, but he still trusted one person above all others, the ant who had always been his rock, his guide, his political mother, Mkabayi. She did not wield the spear herself. That was not her way. Her weapon was influence. She masterminded the plot, bringing together the key players, Shaka's half-brothers, Dingan and Melangina, who craved power, and Mofa, his Induna, who feared his madness. Mkabayi gave them the one thing they lacked, the political courage and the royal blessing to act. The trap was set. With Shaka's army away on campaign, the kingdom was exposed. The conspirators approached the king under a guise of business. They found him in his compound, likely believing himself still untouchable, protected by his own legend. There was no grand battle, no epic last stand. The death of a king is often a brutal, intimate affair. The first spear was thrown, then another. Shaka, the great warrior, was caught off guard, betrayed by the very family he trusted most. He turned, according to legend, and saw his brothers. His eyes might have held not just shock, but a devastating understanding. He reportedly cried out, "Children of my father, what is wrong?" But it was too late. The spears found their mark. The architect of the Zulu Empire fell, not to a rival army, but to the shadows in his own home. And in those shadows, watching, stood the woman who had orchestrated it all. The circle was complete. In the immediate aftermath, Dingan took the throne, and his first act was to purge the royal house of any potential rivals. Securing his power with the same brutality he had learned from Shaka, the empire Mkabayi had saved from self-destruction would continue, though it would soon face the existential threat of the advancing Boers and British. But what of Mkabayi? Her story doesn't end with a neat conclusion. She had achieved her goal, saving the kingdom, but at what cost? She had become the ultimate kingmaker and kingbreaker. She is a figure of immense ambiguity in Zulu history. Was she a heroic savior who made the hardest choice for the good of her people? Or was she a ruthless, power-hungry manipulator who created a tyrant and then eliminated him when he became inconvenient? Her legacy is this. She is the shadow that looms over the rise and fall of the Zulu Golden Age. She embodies the terrifying price of power and the complex moral calculations of leadership. She forced to choose between loyalty to her king and loyalty to her nation. So we are left with a haunting question. Was Mkabayi a villain or a hero? Perhaps she was both. A woman who understood that to build something legendary, you must sometimes make a deal with the devil, and that to save it, you must sometimes be willing to destroy your own creation.